All right.
Man,
Another one down.
another one down. Number two, second guest, man. That was really interesting. First and foremost, welcome to the Say More section. This is where we kind of recap the episode, go over things that kind of struck us or things that we wanted to elaborate on or, the conversation didn't call for. Yeah, there's so much in that conversation that I thought I wanted to go deeper on just about every topic that we talked with Gary. What I really enjoyed was his overall optimism and realistic view. Like, this is the way it is sometimes. You try to do what you can, but you got to deal with what's right in front of you, and sometimes that's physical, sometimes that's emotional, and sometimes that's spiritual. But you got to have awareness. I mean, that is kind of a common theme, with a lot of the topics.
Yeah, I mean, Gary's a interesting guy. He is so smart and he has so much to say. He knows so much about so many things. Like I always joke, well, especially when he was in India with me, because we talked a little bit about that. And I mean, I'm constantly giving him, like he's giving me a hard time. I'm constantly giving him a hard time, similar to the way I give you a hard time. It's like I wouldn't want to be inside his head.
You're so a lot.
It's so a lot.
Yeah, and I loved it about it. I could have listened to his stories and his perspectives on, on a lot of it because it felt vetted. His perspective felt very considered. Like he really took it all in, and questions what he's questioning to the degree that I
Yes.
appreciate. Where it's like I'm not just saying this because this is another opinion that I picked up from this or this. It's I've taken I've taken a lot of time to study this and adapted this perspective with my vast knowledge of my medicine background, my doctor background, physician background. Let's say it, my doctor background. Um, and then at one point early on he just mentions it's amazing to be humbled at how little I know. Obviously, I'm not going to advertise my practice from that point of view, but I think that's a really interesting thing to hear from Gary, and then Werner said the same thing to a certain degree towards the end of his madness in the cave, where he basically got to the point where he's like, we really don't know anything. We really, or we definitely don't know as much as we would like to believe we know in the grand scheme of the universe. And I think that seems, obviously in the first two guests, somewhat of a common thread uh, within the meditation practice. I'm sure you've experienced that. I've definitely experienced that practice where it's like, man, if you want to be humbled, go through the self-reflection process and really look at your shit, and then see what happens next. And that's what I really appreciated about Gary is him. He's obviously very knowledgeable and he has a lot of experience and a lot of perspective, but he also has a very humble view and say, this is just where I'm at. This is just where we're at. We need to, as a community, grow and change and shift. There's a lot of work to be done, so I really appreciated that.
Yeah. I love that you asked him why you he thought that other doctors
Hmm.
didn't question when he did. And that's that same thing we talk about. Like
Yeah,
why is somebody questioning about their upbringing in religion and the other person doesn't, it's like a grace for him that his headaches or whatever it was, he wanted to know more, like just the physical wasn't making sense to him.
right.
And that's what I love about him is his mind body spirit perspective and his deep compassion for people. He
Yeah,
jokes and he's funny and he laughs at himself and he laughs at other people, but he also has a deep love and compassion, for people and humanity. And I mean, it's great to see in a doctor because most doctors, I mean, functional or holistic doctors are a little different because usually you have to pay them cash. They only
Right.
take medical insurance for certain things, and so they get to spend more time with you. When you go to see a regular doctor, you've got a certain amount of time. Usually it's 15, 20 minutes, or in Canada you're allowed to ask two questions per visit. That's it, two questions. Even if I even went in with my mom one time with her doctor, and she was going in for her driver's license test to renew her driver's license, and so they did that, and then I had to ask him a question about her medication, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, no, time's up," and he literally was out the door before I
Wow.
even could. Yeah.
And I feel like that has aided in the mistrust between, and I struggle with this because I'm, when I talk about some of my past friction with organized religion, Christianity, I also have certain friction with Western medicine because of mostly because I don't trust, and I've had experiences of, with when I was young, 18, being told I was going to be on a, an antacid, Nexium, actually, specifically, for the rest of my life, because I had an ulcer. And, Gary put it in a really, really great way. It's like two things here. In one situation, this medicine is really good and it can help you. In this other situation, this medicine is not going to help you, and it's not going to be a good situation. And so I had that experience, and I ended up having to go cold turkey after about a year and a half, 2 years, and went off the medication, lost 40, 50 pounds, got on a healthier lifestyle, meditated, started doing yoga, and I haven't been on that since. And that's created a mistrust for me because I literally asked the doctor at that time, is there alternative measures I can take to, ensure I don't have to be on this? He said, no, this is just, you're going to be on this one a day for the rest of your life. And that was not true, and it took me challenging that and rebelling against that for that to be true. And and I feel like he did a really good job of just saying yes, yes, there is a common religion that a lot of physicians have to enter into because of a lot of lifestyle decisions. Like, for instance, it's $300,000-$400,000 maybe sometimes to get through your schooling. Well, in order to even begin a life where you can get a house, you can have a family, you have to start making money. And in order to make money, you have to adhere to the status quo of a system. So I really appreciated that because that was an opportunity for him to shit on a lot of doctors, but he didn't. He said, no, this is just their product of circumstances in a lot of cases, and he had sympathy even for people that he disagreed with. And man, what a way to walk, kind of his mantra, which is we have to look at each other as we're united. We're not separate things. I am you, you are me. We are one, above and beneath no one. That showed very, very plainly in even that part of the conversation where he's like, yeah, that is real, and I'm not going to hide that fact from you, but I'm also not going to just sit here and pretend if you do adhere to the system, you're just an asshole. That's not the case, and it's a much more nuanced and complex conversation to be had, and that actually brought me to trust more. Like, okay, well, I got to lighten up too on my relationship and trust in the Western medicine field. So
Well, I just finished discussing this with one of my clients, who's had some medical issues for several years now, and she can't figure it out, and she she finally got so frustrated just yesterday that she's dealing with some toxins in her body. She can't figure it out, belly issues, and she read this toxin book beginning to end on Sunday so that she could prepare for her doctor's appointment Monday, so that she could have a knowledgeable conversation.
hmm
And this is someone who in the past is sort of, I feel like it's almost like when people don't educate themselves about their own body and their own health and food and all that stuff. It's like you feel powerless. So
Yeah.
knowledge is power. And so she felt so much more confident going in to the doctor to ask specific questions. And, and that's what I feel like that's the sort of the sign of evolution and a sign of a shift in consciousness,
Right.
that people are empowering themselves and figuring in things out. And I have my own ulcer story as well,
Yep.
similar to yours. I went in my 20s before meditation with an ulcer, and it was about 2 year long struggle. Doctor put me on Zantac, wouldn't touch the ulcer. Then he put me on Prilosec,
Yep.
which just came out then. Now it's over the counter, but it was prescription. It was like $7 a pill,
Yep.
18 years ago. And then a boyfriend told me that if I started meditating, that it would get rid of my ulcer. And literally the day I started meditating, my ulcer never came back. So a couple months later, I'm at the doctor. He's like, "Oh, I've seen your chart. Well, how's your ulcer doing?" And I'm like, "I started meditating and it went away." And he goes, "Yeah, I've heard before that can help." He never bothered to suggest it to
Right,
me.
right. You stress is a big factor. Obviously eating, diet, that's a huge factor, but also, yeah, stress levels and that was the best thing that I think Gary could do in that situation is put the two things together and look at both sides and say, yes, meditation is really great. It's great to have a spiritual practice, and it will help reduce stress. It'll help you with your emotional state and your psychological state. But there are going to be things that we can't manage, and looking at both sides and saying there's a compromise that both sides can have, and they can work together. And that's what I like his practice called the middle path, because a, a physician can do a much better job. And the whole medicine field, the whole Western medicine field, can do a much better job of looking at everything, looking at your diet, looking at your stress levels, looking at your lifestyle choices, and then looking at the medicine that might help integrate into that. But
They don't.
they don't. They look at, oh, you have an ulcer. This helps with the symptoms of ulcers, and and that's just a very small view. And that's what I think also is, looking at insurance, and I'm kind of making that this is my perspective, but it seems like insurance is really good for people who don't necessarily take care of their lives. They don't eat healthy necessarily. It's just it's a perpetuation, and a lot of times people that live a healthier lifestyle, um, I we don't have we don't have great insurance, but we're very healthy. We don't go to the doctor a lot, and it costs a lot of money because most of the time it's out of pocket because we don't want to pay the really high deductible. And if you're going to go in and spend $5,000-$10,000 a year because you're an unhealthy person, you're not even
It's
thinking
worth
about
it.
the
Yeah.
deductible. But for my family, we're trying to live healthy so we don't have to go to the doctor. And I like that Gary kind of represents this someone who lives in between those two worlds and asks the questions like, what's your diet like? What's your lifestyle like? What are you dealing with physically now? What are some of the symptoms you're having in your body right now? And then trying to, and also I like that it's okay, well, we're going to use medicine right now because right now we need to get you on a path to not have to be, taking medication. And while we're doing that, we're going to look at IVs. I love that. Like he said, okay, well, I'm going to put you on an antidepressant and an anti-anxiety, but then we're going to put you on some IV fluids to try to get your vitamins up. And then I'm sure there was a conversation about, well, are you exercising? Are you eating right? And we're gonna do all of these things at once, and then we're going to remonitor and remonitor and remonitor, and then we're going to start taking away things that you may not need anymore. And this is a path out of the disease instead of now you have a disease, you're always going to have a disease. This is going to help with the disease, but it's never going to cure the disease. That's what it feels like sometimes, and that's what I think is frustrating for a lot of people is like, can't there be a compromise here? Can't there be some way to look at this, from a different angle. And I have been heard, Joe Rogan is a huge proponent of, not to name drop on a, podcast platform, but it's like he has a lot of conversations and he's talking vitamins, he's talking about exercise, he's talking about eating right. And it's really, I think it is becoming integrated into our society and our culture. And Gary seems to be a great advocate for that kind of lifestyle, and actually trying to be a partner in coming out of your disease, from whatever angle you need to look at. So it's
Oh
very cool.
yeah. I mean, and you gotta love a doctor who's barefoot and teaches his patients how to meditate.
Yeah,
I mean,
I love that.
it's amazing. No, I've seen his last couple of clinics, and we actually used to do gigs together. Like we would,
Oh, cool.
he would do like a lecture, and I would sing a couple songs before his lecture, and then we'd both talk about meditation, and there
Yeah.
we did a couple ones like that, and another one I think I sang at his one of his big centers. And then he offered a meditation after or something like that. It was great. So, yeah, I've known him for a long time and just adore him and appreciate his knowledge and his wisdom and the balance that he brings
Yeah,
as a
man.
physician and the spiritual. I mean,
Yeah.
science and spirituality, it's pretty cool mix.
Yeah, it is. When you have awareness in both, when you bring that into them, you're gonna see some very, very cool things. And he points the way towards, um, learning from disease, learning from struggle, learning from, uh, kind of the challenging circumstances that we come into, and that shows his optimism. It's like, yeah, it sucks right now, there's no way around it. We've had a pandemic, we're having the shadow side of our culture. The political system is just in, it's all fear based, fear everywhere. And that really, it's funny that I've had to work on that personally. I'm sure you've had to work on, we've talked about the shadow side in past conversations, but we're seeing that kind of resonate through society, and there is an advocacy for bringing awareness to, hey, maybe the reason we don't agree is because we're afraid of each other, in whatever
Right.
capacity. And maybe the answer to that is learn how to not be afraid of each other. And how to not be afraid of each other is, don't view the other person as opposite or separate. It's funny. It's like the golden rule: treat someone how you would want to be treated. But that it works. I mean, it will always work, and it will at least diffuse the situation enough to begin having a conversation and trying to step out and come out of that fear.
And the thing is, too, I want to point out, too, yes, totally agree with that. But you can't convince anybody of something that,
Yeah,
you can't convince anybody of anything.
yeah,
And so for me, um, I like, lead by example,
right.
just stand strong in who you are. And gosh, there was something else I was going to say that is good with that too. Um, what were you just talking about? Good thing I can edit these. No, right
Yeah.
before that you were talking about, but I
Oh,
thought of a
getting
more
out of fear
gentle
and having a conversation about
with
I mean,
with fear. Yeah. So you can tell, like you and I, that makes sense to us, but the
right,
people who are on the other side of it, that it doesn't like to be connected to somebody on the other side of the world or connected to our neighbor, like we're one, like that doesn't make any
right.
sense to them. But what is maybe a baby step to that is, what they say about if you're afraid of snakes, just learn about them.
Yes, yes,
And like what I said about my brother, he became a little less prejudiced when he did business with the Pakistani guy, and then they became friends, and then he was
yeah,
less prejudiced. So it's like, once you become knowledgeable about something or familiar with something, or it becomes personal to you, like when you don't know somebody, it's easy to put them in a box and say, well, they're different than me, I don't like them. But when you get to know them, like maybe your neighbor, maybe you're a prejudiced person, And well, they've done studies with this, with people going into a room together and they don't know each other's belief systems and they become
Yeah.
friends and then they find out they're total polar opposites.
Yeah.
But it's okay because they didn't find, you know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
those are the bridges. Instead
Yeah.
of coming at from a like, we're all one, well, you and I experience that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But how do we bridge the gap between people that really don't experience that
Right.
at all?
Well, and that's kind of the I guess the adventure of this podcast and this conversations that we're having is trying to find out, what instigates the grace that allows someone to enter a path towards self-reflection, towards enlightening, towards waking up. What ultimately is the mechanism that puts you on the path. And that's what I talked to, or I didn't, we talked to Gary about, in the early stages. He said, honestly, the debilitating headaches were such a grace for me because it forced me to look outside of medicine, because I knew that this medicine that I was taking was not for longevity. And so that's an interesting twist. It's like
Well, he
that's
talked about the stress response. That
correct.
was a big, that
Yeah,
everybody has a different stress response.
yeah,
His was a migraine headache. Other people were internalizing it, and years later, they died of cancer or something like that.
yeah,
Like that's the really. I'm glad you brought that up because that's such an important point. And I wanted to ask him, but I think it's kind of an endless cycle because it's one of my challenges as a coach too. How do you get somebody to understand the psychophysiological connection, like the mind
right.
body and the emotional connection? That's one of my hardest things. The same client who's been dealing with her physical body, her belly, it's like, I'm pretty sure it's emotional.
Yeah,
Even though it's showing up as physical, doesn't mean it's not physical. And when somebody like that hears me say that, they hear, oh, it's psychological, it's in my head. No, it's not what I mean.
right.
It started in the emotional body and it has now moved to dis-ease in the body, to
Correct.
a physical. So it is a physical problem,
Yeah.
but it started off as, you know, an emotional. And so you have to heal that emotional aspect as well as the physical aspect. So
Yes.
that's what I wanted to ask Gary. Like, how do you, because I know he probably can't get as many people meditating and doing the spiritual work as he would like. Um, and that's just something what I was talking about, the pain level. Everybody has a different threshold of pain. People will make the changes when they're in enough pain, and
Yeah.
everybody's threshold is different.
Yeah.
It's like the drug addict. What is bottom?
Right, right. Well, and that's the harder part is, and like he said, where some people get into stage 4 cancer of their spiritual, you know, extreme side, their emotional extreme side of things, that asking somebody with stage 4 cancer to go on a holistic diet, we need to do much more dramatic, intervention here. And that's when people start identifying, not people, I have done this. When you identify with your pain, when you identify with your disease, you start to really cement into that. And that's a spiritual aspect to what you're talking about. Yes, it could start with an emotional trauma, end up becoming a physical disease, which the symptoms of which that physical disease could cause other problems within your physical body. And if you don't have the spiritual practice of looking at the whole of that, you're going to become more identified with, well, nobody else has the answer for me, so I am just diseased. I have stomach issues. I am someone who will just struggle with stomach issues my whole life. Part of that might be true, but kind of what we went into towards the end, if you convinced there's no way out of this, you will not find a way out of this. But if you are convinced that there is a possibility for healing, that's the start. That's the seed that you need to come out of that. And then you start looking, and then you start questioning, and you start really taking in as much information about it to figure out, okay, let's say you go through and you find the emotional trauma and you deal with that emotional trauma. Well, you still have the physical ailment of that, because of however long you might have let that manifest in your system for. So it still can be both things, and that's the thing that I really struggle with right now with with finding solutions is if it's not one solution, there is no solution. It's like the mask. Well, the mask isn't really a cure, no, but it's a really great aid for respect of our community, for mutual respect just in general. But then also, yes, the science is backing that it doesn't have to work 100% of the time for it to work at all. And this all or nothing thing really just keeps the extremes, that pendulum swinging back and forth. And I think that was what was really kind of this common felt thing within this conversation was bringing it back to center and trying to get away from the extremes and really bringing that to okay, first thing is start looking for a solution. And then the questions start, and I really appreciate that kind of mentality and that process. And, it's, man, it's just good. That concept is just good medicine in all of your, aspects of life. So, we'll see. I'm looking forward to how people wake up to this and, start looking at this and maybe, it's going to be it's a slow ship, so it's going to take a while to turn it, but, we're on to something.
Hey, my favorite saying is you can move a mountain, but you have to do it one stone at a time.
Yeah, man.
And the key is to do small incremental changes daily. And
Yeah.
I've always done that. If I want to play guitar, learn a language, I do a little bit every day. And that's
Yeah.
been my meditation practice. I do a lot every day, but do that every day. And whatever we do every day eventually grows.
Yeah.
Even like doing the podcast. We do it consistently once a week. After a year,
Yep.
we've got, you know,
52.
yeah, yeah, 52 episodes. Yeah.
And man, if we can have 52 conversations that are, as open and enlightening as, these first two have been, man, it's going to be great. And we got we got a variety coming, and that's what's really exciting is it's not, it's somewhat of the same topic, but it's from a whole lot of different angles, and that's going to be really exciting. And, I'm enjoying it. I'm sure you're enjoying it.
I am enjoying it.
So hopefully
Thank
everybody
you.
else is enjoying it.
Yeah. That's okay. We are. Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to break the fourth wall. Yes, you may not be enjoying it. We do care, but only to the degree that we're still going to enjoy it no matter what. So,
Right.
you know,
Exactly. We
it's
do
fun.
care. We love it that you love it, but we also are doing it for ourselves.
Yes, yes. So sorry, sorry, not sorry, I guess is kind of the answer. So,
Awesome.
all right.
Enough said.
Take care. Have a good night.
Yeah.